Somebody has mentioned the number 500 billion of barrels that was left in the ground. I cannot guarantee that number, but it has been said. That's quite interesting. Since then, some few discoveries have been made. Lots of technical discoveries, I think. One field is being produced for gas. One field is put into production pretty soon. It's probably fair to say that it cannot sustain $40 a barrel. Goliath. And then we have a few discoveries like Wisting, Skrugard, and so on that may be commercial one day. I'd like to ask Geir Elvebakk. He is a long time, old timer in the Barents Sea. Geir, I give you, out of generosity, I give you 500 million kroner. The challenge is that you're allowed to drill one well based on that money. You can drill it wherever you want in the Barents Sea. It does not need to be an open area. So where would you go?
Obelix.
Okay, that was, if you could continue like this, we end up the discussion in 5 minutes. But certainly it's an interesting answer, and I'll let you elaborate on that.
Yeah, well, you have 470 meters of oil in that structure. It's about 60 kilometer long structure and 25 kilometers wide. This one well with good oil shows. And if you go into the CNC database on carbonate rocks in Russia, you'll realize that there are several fields there that has, they're producing from Pelaplecina buildups with good oil gradients, high saturation, 60, 70, 80% oil. And when they put a well in the adjacent lagoons with poor reservoir quality, they have a saturation, oil saturation of 20 to 40% there with water gradient. Exactly what you see on the Obelix. Poor reservoir quality, water gradient, but this, as we experience from the Russian side, this is the normal thing there. The water gradient associated with poor reservoir quality adjacent to water or oil gradient, oil producing reservoirs, the same stratigraphic level.
So you're actually saying that the well was placed in an awkward position, so to speak. You should have placed maybe a couple of kilometers to the side.
I must admit that I choose the well location.
Oops.
and the option for the well was to drill it in a non-reservoir rock, because this was the opening well in the Barents Sea after it had been closed for several years. So Norsk Hydro was working for when this well was planned. We had an expedition to Spitsbergen looking at car stretches with drilling engineers and lots of other people, and the argument was that they'd never drill into cast without knowing the pressure in the structure. So the first well was planned to not test the reservoir rock on the Obelix, but test the pressure in fact. So the well was a tremendous success. 470 meters of oil at the structures. It was not tested, and on the MC meeting, when the drilling location was decided, said that if we hit one drop of hydrocarbon in this location, we'll immediately put up well number 2. Well, 407 meters of oil at the structure is more than one drop of oil. So it's a super giant. We can talk about the Oseberg size if you have a good success.
Come on. Again, don't exaggerate. So, it's as far as I know, it's a dry well. In the sense that it's a technical discovery, maybe, yes.
Well, let's not discuss.
So why did Norsk Hydro follow up on this one?
I think that the carbonate is very complicated rocks.
But you said that 50% of the oil in the world is produced from carbonates. It can't be that complicated.
No, well, yes. There are many carbonate fields in the US that have been rediscovered after drilling, pretended like it being a dry well. And by modern technologies, they are able to go back and look at the well logs and see, oh, hey, you have made a discovery.
Jon, you have some experience with carbonates following Alta and Rystad. Would you sort of confirm what Geir is saying here, that carbonates are complicated and maybe you need 2 wells to understand what's going on?
Yes, of course carbonates are complex reservoirs, and I'm not working on the reservoir part of the petroleum system myself, but obviously carbonates have a lot of variability when it comes to diagenesis, and you have different types of porosity. You have sort of multi-porosity systems, so you need maybe fractures in addition to calcification or works. You know, you need porosity, but also need permeability. But as for also many places in the Barents Sea, I think we are still in the beginning of building our understanding. That is both for source rocks, reservoir rocks, distribution of these rocks. There's an enormous area with around 100 wells. But for the Loppahøy, of course, Lundin, we are now working on that to understand these carbonates and how they work. And just as we saw from the Gotta test, that they actually work. So that also applies for other things in the Barents Sea. We don't really know why they work, but they actually work. You know, we see all this oil on the Loppahøy, and yes, most likely from Triassic source rock, but still don't really have drilled a super rich cobble source rock in an exploration well. We have it on the Svalestone. And also some mystery oils like on the Finnmark platform east, and the distribution of that source system. It's still unknown, so there's so many things to work on and to create more understanding. And in the coming years, I think we will move forward on that.
I'm curious, Lundin has taken a lot of acreage on the Loppahøy. Is that Obelix well in your acreage?
Yes, it's in the license 609.
Oops. So, maybe they sit on a golf field.
Yeah, so that's the reference to Ostberg. Sounds interesting.
Yeah. Okay, we have a question or a comment from the audience. Lars-Edvard Kjelsvik.
More comment than a question, because what Geir is alluding to here is something similar to what we worked with in Mission Canyon in the North Dakota. Mission Canyon being a carbonate reservoir, having produced 1.5 billion barrels of oil. And one of the key factors that we found there was that the link between, that Geir was also alluding to, the quality difference between the good and the not so good reservoir, and the difference in the water, in the fluid behavior being linked to the fascies effectively. So the key in order to move this forward is then to try to understand the depositional systems, where I start banging my own drum, and you can read about that in the next number of Geo. But the understanding of the depositional systems and the influence on primary, secondary porosity permeability, and more importantly on the well pump curves and the PVT curve analysis. So I think I would highly support Geir's statement on this.
Very good. Thank you, Dr. Dart. Nils-Henrik, this may actually be good news for you, because you are actually predicting very optimistic, or you're saying that we can look at the Barents as quite an optimistic way, in the sense that the production will, in 2050, 50% of the Norwegian oil will come from the Barents Sea. I did not see that you presented any kind of resource figures from the Barents Sea. How can you know that so much oil is there that you can actually produce this much in 35 years' time?
Of course, and then everything is assumptions, but you know, we mostly base our volumes on what NPD has been publishing, so that's the volumes. And then we add some assumptions on timing on top of that, probably a realistic approach. But you know, you ask what's next. I would say what's next is two things: that we really get some developments going, further developments. You know, we need those field centers that can motivate further exploration of maybe smaller prospects around. And the other is that we know we really need one big discovery in the Barents Sea Southeast to really spur the interest in that area. That's what we are waiting for, I guess.
One big discovery in the Barents Sea Southeast.
Yeah.
Will we? What do you think? Will we find that? Will there be one? You know something about that area.
Okay, I'm always positive.
Yeah,
look at the possibilities. Managers tend to be negative, so you need to be optimistic. You must think that there is possibility. If you say I don't believe in it, why should you work there? You must believe in things, and then you start searching for it. That's the way it is. But I'm very interested in an area that has been very little focus on. It's the very shallow part of the Finnmark platform north of Stjerneøya.
This is where Ørnen is being drilled now, is it?
No. It's
Okay.
it's south of the Hammerfest Basin, far west of the
Ah, okay.
Finnmark platform. There you can see that there is a basin stretching far almost into the shoreline in Finnmark on these old seismic and poor quality seismic data. You can see tremendous nice clinoform systems coming out from Fennoscandia, both in the Permian and in the Triassic. There are lots of anomalies in these seismic data. I guess the Fennoscandian sediments are much more quartz-rich than the classical Triassic, feldspar-rich, poor quality sands that we have. That's an area that I like the oil industry to start looking for. It's poor, old quality 2D data there, but you start looking into the seismic. It's very much anomalies in the seismic data.
I think before we continue, I think we need to call upon the local newspapers in Finnmark here. You're predicting an oil field quite close to shore. That's a dangerous game, I can tell you. Carbonates certainly are of great interest. Kristian, you have been mostly looking at the classic rocks, I think, in around the Hoop area, and of course also in the western Barents Sea. So we've been sort of in the eastern part of the Barents Sea so far. What do you think? Can you say a few things about the western Barents Sea? I think to me it's only shales and clay, and just forget about it. Do you have a different opinion? I mean, talk about western Barents Sea, west of the Loppahar.
West of Loppahar, yeah. Okay. Related to source rocks, there have been shows of source rocks in Torsk. Source rock. I think the reservoir mapping the reservoir, that is the main critical.
You believe in source rocks in the western part, but the reservoir rocks are critical.
Yeah, there was some drilling the Bjurstrøm. Was it that name? Only finding shale, I think. So it's then you need to go back to the play and figure out where is the sand.
Okay.
So I think that is the main challenge in the.
Yeah,
in
but
the,
source rocks, we believe. And
It's
younger source like that, Torbjørn.
young, of course, yeah, because it's very deep or deeply buried. So the expulsion timing is of course a critical factor.
In your talk today, you talk about the HIs as leads. Do you see those in the western Barents Sea? You see the HIs?
I have not worked with the
giants
in
okay.
in that area.
Okay. Yeah, sorry, Geir, please.
I can give a quick comments on the rest of the area. There are sands in the Triassic. The Silvrift mid-Eocene, sands have been caught by IQ in many localities. I think 2 or 3 cores have it. And the same sand is also penetrated in one hydro well there. So there are sands, and you also see seismic evidences of sands. Clinoforms with flat events. Flat events you see if you have a thick development or rather good sands. And they are associated with clinoform faces building out. And if you want to look at it into this area here for exploration purposes, look at the margin of the eastern margin of the Sørvest-Norge Basin. There are lots of anomalies in the seismic data there that my previous colleague Kai Ogstad claimed this is beautiful DHIs.
Okay.
So both the DHIs and the Climate Association is telling us, and the core telling us that there are sands, particularly in the Sindrift inconformity in the west part of the Barents.
Good. Torbjørn, you gave a very precise account, I think, of 3 different source rocks in the Bering Sea. Source rocks that have been proved. They're not everyone is as good as the others, so to speak. But also then you got ideas from Geir, you got ideas from Jon. What did you learn from their talks that you can sort of incorporate into your own understanding of the Bering Sea source rocks?
From Jon I learned definitely that Gota is an interesting source rock. Finally I got the data. I'm still wondering about Alta, so it's still one question. But I learned that was very important for me to learn. From Geir I learned that there are source rock possibilities in the Gippsland group and more than the Tetragraphs formation. The problem with the Paleozoic in the Barents Sea is, apart from understanding the social distribution, is the timing. Most of the oil was, or not only most, almost all of the oil was expelled from the social already in early Triassic. So what could catch that oil? We have a few spots where it is possible to catch it, and that is on the Finnmark platform, and it is on the Loppahai. So,
of course, I listened to your first part of your talk. You talked about the charge. If it's 0, forget about it. Then I see a clear contrast between you and Geir. He's the optimist. I sort of get a pessimistic view from you. Are you an explorationist?
I'm giving a realistic view. So because that's my job to be realistic. Explorationist should be optimistic, but I'm a consultant, so I have to be realistic.
Okay, so you don't. Interesting.
And if you want me to go for an area, you can add my maps together. And you will find one area that will be very green on the map if you add those 3 orange maps together.
What do we get?
And that is the western part of the Loppahai and the margin to the west of that.
This is Obelix.
Yeah, this is Obelix, this is Johan Castberg, this is Gota, this is, it is 90% of the oil reserves.
That's the good news. The bad news is that Lundin has got all the acreage.
Oh, they have been smart, I mean, that's not...
Sorry, they've been smart?
Yes.
Okay. It's a simple... Okay. So that's the sweet spot of the Bering Sea, as you see it.
It is the sweetest spot.
It's the sweetest spot.
But if you follow the Upper Jurassic trend, there are more sweet spots along the trend that you can follow. But I do not have the details on traps and reservoirs.
But that's sweet spot, and it depends on the Triassic source rock and...
No, it depends on the Jurassic source rock.
Jurassic source rock.
But of course, in that area, you have both Triassic source rock, you have Jurassic source rock, and you also indicate a permanent source rock.
And different age reservoirs, both plastics and carbonates.
Yes,
you have everything.
And the timing is correct. So,
Did you guys know this before you sent in your application for the 23rd round? Kristian, please.
Yeah, but I had a comment. It is on the slope, so it is buried at so that on the slope you will get expulsion over a range of time, or long range of time, a possibility for that. So that also adds that you will have a lot of hydrocarbons expelling through time.
Nils-Henrik, you are concerned about numbers. You say, sorry, waiting for the biggest discovery in the Bering Sea. It happens that there are no, maybe with the exception of Snøhvit, it was heavy oil, lots of it, it was heavy. I mean, if you compare with the development in the North Sea, where you find lots of giants before we started being interested in fields of 100, 200 million barrels, as was the case with the Barents Sea now. Do you think there will be a giant there based on statistics or based on numbers? Because numbers can be used for many things.
It's of course hard to say, but you know what we normally see when new basins are opening, that they first make some small discoveries, and then the giants are coming, and then you sort of found them. And then you start looking for the rest, and you find less and less.
But come on, we've been doing 120 wells in the Barents Sea.
Exactly.
It's about time we find it.
So the question is if we have found the largest yet, or are they still to come? Or have we seen the top of the finding curve, or the discovery curve right now?
But if we listen to Geir, the giant has been found.
Exactly.
It's just a matter of appraising it. Is that right, Geir? You don't want to answer that, that's why it would be. But my question is actually, just a second, maybe the Barents is just a hype. We're spending so much money, and we finally find a field, we don't develop it, and if we develop it, the cost is tremendous.
Yeah, that's very interesting, but you know, with the activity, expected activity, I showed earlier, with many wells being drilled every year, say next 5 years. I think if when we sit here in 2019 or something, we will probably know a lot more.
Okay, so you're welcome back in 4 years' time.
Yeah, I'll be here.
So how much oil, how much reserves do we need to define to recover the cost that we already put into the Barents Sea?
That also I have to calculate that, of course. But
yeah. Please before 2019.
Sure. I think one important question here when it comes to economics is, of course, the cost side of the Barents Sea. And currently, Barents Sea is not very expensive, but it's also not very cheap. So it's maybe we're talking about break-even costs in the 60 to 80 barrels per, or US dollar per barrel. There are a lot of future opportunities for bringing that down, especially I think on the technology side. Better drilling, cheaper facilities, cheaper winterization, but also technologies related to increasing the reservoir or the recovery rates, getting more out.
Yeah.
So technology also I think play a key role in actually exploiting what we have found already and will find.
What's the break-even price for Gula?
I don't have it in my head, but it's
more than 60?
certainly about current oil price, yes.
I think it's about 16. Anybody else? No? Jon, you want to say something?
Yes, actually, just what you said, the technology might be important to make, maybe not we find the big giants, but we can find discoveries here and there, 100, 200, 250 million barrels recoverable. So, but maybe we need to cooperate in Barents Sea to make sort of pipelines or facilities that everyone chips in, maybe even the state chips in a little bit, and then it can be the cost can come down to a level where we can make not giants but sub-giants or smaller, even smaller discoveries actually work or actually commercial. Because it's like a myth that the Arctic or Barents Sea is not the Arctic. That's another myth. Barents Sea is not the Arctic with ice sheets and polar bears. It's more open marine or open system. That's ice-free during most of the year. But anyway, cooperation maybe and technology together can make the Barents Sea commercial basin, even with the discoveries not as we are used to from Statfjord and Oseberg and those areas, because maybe those days are over. But Maybe one day we can actually also then produce the Snøhvit oil. You know, going back and drill some clever wells and take out the oil. Like
you say those days are over, but so I'll ask you the question. So do you think, based on your experience in the Barents Sea, if you're on the social team, will we ever find a giant in the Barents Sea? A giant being defined as more than 500 million barrels recoverable.
No, absolutely not. Especially we have some large domes and structures in the eastern part.
So you talk about Barents Sea southeast,
for example, and also further east, and they have the like Stockman type of structures, big gentle domes that can, of course, be that can be real giants.
Yeah.
But if you have a big giant full of gas, maybe that's not, you know, we want oil. I mean, that's the.
We don't want gas.
No, because it's a bit expensive to move that gas to the consumers from the Barents Sea.
You agree to that, Nils-Henrik? Do we need gas? Is that just a disaster?
And I think you know, eventually the world will need a lot of gas, and we have again technology. You know, think about Arctic ready FLNG, scaled to smaller accumulations. Also, it could be nice technology to utilize in this area. So there's a, if you think far ahead, there are a lot of opportunities.
We have learned a lot. Actually, your comment, Torbjørn, is quite interesting. I'm curious where to go. We're talking about, we have the open areas, we have areas that are not open yet, we have the northern Barents Sea, we should include that. Now the Barents Sea southeast is coming. So if we'll actually look towards the 24th round, which is the area that will be hot? Actually, it's only 2 years' time ahead of us. You have any opinion about that, Geir? Except for the Olympics, of course.
Yeah, I think that we will explore the Finnmark platform better than we have done so far. There are just a few little activities there. You know, Lundin, of course, is active there, but there is another license. I think the Finnmark platform in general will be an interesting target in the coming years. It's very difficult to make any good structure there, but I guess that there must be some possibilities for stratigraphic traps.
We also had to talk about the northern Barents Sea. Do we actually see, anybody has any opinion of that? Do we actually need to put pressure on the political system in order to expand our area for exploration? Torbjørn, do we have a charge in the northern Barents Sea? Is there any reason to go there? If there's no charge, no reason to go.
We have definitely charged the Steinkobber formation. Follow the charge, follow the source hook, and you will find traps. And the Steinkobber is present all the way from the Loppa High to Spitsbergen or Svalbard. And if you have reservoirs and traps in connection with that, it should be very promising.
You say the Steinkobber will be mature and not over mature and not immature?
No, it should be perfect, at least.
Is in the middle of the oil window all the way?
More or less, yes.
That's good news.
It is in the oil window at Hopen, for example. It is in the oil window at the type locality in Advental and Svalbard. It's so why not? Yes.
Is this correct, Jon? You know about that?
Oh yes, I totally agree. They have a facies belt of the oil-prone or prolific low Triassic system all the way from Loppa up to Spitsbergen. And but maybe we could ask for some more maps, maybe been made available to do some modeling in that area.
From NPD?
For example, to include the regional maturity modeling south of Spitsbergen. Maybe even to look at general trends of migration to see if they sort of focus towards certain heights or structures as a starting point.
Okay, so there is actually, it seems that there is some kind of consensus here that we should put some pressure on the political system to move further north. At least there are geological reasons to believe that.
Lots of good reasons. Another reason not to sort of be too fast is to let's do a really proper job in the Barents, maybe make some oil discoveries and move them into development, and then opening up the northern areas. I understand that the government want to take it step by step, of course, to prolong the industry's lifetime.
That's the way we do it in Norway. That's well means. We do have some expertise in the audience. Expertise on source rocks. Dag Carstens, University of Oslo. You have given a talk here before on the seminars about source rocks. So what is your comment to what we have been taught today about different source horizons and so on? Have you learned something?
Yeah, do you mean if I learned something? Or?
Yeah, or
if I
is it usable?
I'm a humble man, I always learn. So I agree with most of the things we have heard here today. If you ask me what I did not hear,
yeah, let's ask that question.
Maybe some brainchild of my own, which may be correct or wrong, but I guess that in the work we are doing now with the PhDs, the 3 PhDs, there will be about 10 papers coming out, the first one now in January. I think we see a lot of evidences for many of the traps having been charged many times, as Torbjørn also alluded to, and that there are often several source rocks contributing to the charges of the traps over time. So we, just as you have blended whiskies, I don't know if you will drink that, maybe a small one for Christmas. You have this thing about blended oils, which is a bigger issue in the Barents Sea than say in the Viking Ramen, where it's sort of easier to tie back to the source rock. So a few things are a little bit difficult in the Barents Sea with respect to source to oil correlation. But I've told you repeatedly, and you should learn it, Halfdan, that I told you always, don't worry about the source rocks in the Barents Sea. And I think we have heard that here today. There are plenty of them. And consider also...
There are plenty of source rocks, but according to Torbjørn, the timing is not necessarily very good.
Yes, Torbjørn is right. But the thing is that the source rocks, when they expel, they leave a trail of oil. Torbjørn is right that the charge may have been lost from the traps, but it may still help, because the oil which moved through the source rock, from the source rock through the carriers, have actually made the later migration much more efficient. That's one thing to consider. And as we heard from Geir and others on the Loppahai, you see all these evidences for several oil charges. And as he said, the carbonates are oil wetting, and they sort of have also preserved some sort of porosity on the highs. And they have certainly contributed. And I would also like to see some focus on the perspective of long distance migration, say, from the Stockman area. We heard now just here from the panel these huge traps mentioned by Jon-Halvard. I see certainly a possibility that this could be actually charged from the east.
Yeah.
So okay. I actually, Torbjørn is a cautious man. He's the first guy I worked for actually, and at IFE in the Stone Age. But we have heard all the spread here from the cautious, realistic to the more optimistic. I certainly belong to the more optimistic. I see a big future for the Barents Sea and the circum-Arctic exploration.
Yeah, very good.
So you should push the politicians with your journal and really push forward.
You like that, Nils-Henrik? It fits your picture of the future.
Yes, sure. Of course, it's easy to get into politics and environmental discussions as well. I'm not going to touch upon that, but when we move further north, again, technology is interesting, and you know you have to handle ice and production under ice. But you know we see promising initiatives like the subsea factory. You can do everything on the ocean floor. You don't need any installations floating around in the ice, etc. So you know, there are possibilities coming.
Actually, you're confusing the discussion because you're taking into floaters and things has to do with production, but that's okay. Kristian, please.
Yeah, I think that the APA around in Barents Sea, the APA area need to be opened for wider and leave the licensing rounds to the other the rim of where we can that have not been drilled yet. So yeah, Stop and Hoop and Bjurstrøm platform. And,
so that would be for the 24th round.
Yes.
Yeah, that's an open area, so we can isn't it? Stop it.
Yeah, Stop and is open.
Yeah, so it's for you to promote those blocks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I could do so.
Yeah, you just study. Torbjørn, you said in the talk today that you had sort of 20-kilometer buffer for the migration. Is that? I thought that was not much.
Well, it is. It's more than any migration in the Norwegian Shelf. The longest migration in the North Sea measured is 13 kilometers. 13.
Which is where?
Onto the Utsira High.
Utsira High?
Yes. The longest from mid-Norway is far less, it's only a few kilometers.
Okay.
And if you go to the Barents Sea, the longest is in fact the Goliath.
Which is how far?
Oh, it could be as much as 50 kilometers, but it is not that far from the nearest natural source rock. But I believe that Goliath is the spill from Albatross, so then the migration is substantial. But my buffer of 20 kilometers is just arbitrary, made by GIS. So we have to study that by migration modeling to define the apex point of the. So that should be the next step, but I do not have those maps, so I cannot do that. So, but that's up to the oil companies.
Actually, what you're telling me is that migration is almost always just a few kilometers.
No, it is not. It could be much more. The CD field in Denmark, for example, is much longer.
Yeah.
It depends on the track you have.
Yeah.
So it happens so from Norway that the possible track is only about 20 kilometers.
But the normal is just that you have a local sourcing fact.
Yes,
just down deep from a field.
Yeah, it seems so. Yeah.
Jon, you want to comment?
Yes, I agree with Torbjørn that we don't see much evidence of long distance migration in the Barents Sea, and as you say, the Jan in Goliath, there we see some signs using the geochemistry that we have migration from tens of kilometers. Otherwise, I think it's quite close, or the trap doesn't seem to be very far away from the kitchen. In some cases, we actually can done some experiments, mapping the traps and the kitchens and try to calibrate the models using what we know, and often we see that these distances are less than maybe 15 kilometers. But also, as Dag says, especially with thinking about the deep basins in the east, in Russia, that you can actually think that you have almost like in a four-lane basin setting, that you can have this long distance migration working maybe along an erosional surface or an area that has sort of seen so many fluids migrate through time that it's like, as Dag says, like a petroleum superhighway. But that maybe sort of, you have to look at different scales. Big structures, big kitchens, maybe long distances. But smaller kitchens maybe don't have the capacity to reach that far. But they maybe have to look at traps in the proximity of those kitchens. But yeah, At least that's what you see from the geochemistry of the oils we have access to.
Geir, if we go east, if we go to Kilimanjaro Basin, I think you mentioned it in your talk. That's a very prolific basin. Lots of oil, onshore, predominantly so far. Is there any reason, and actually also, the main source rock in that basin is the Devonian, the Manic Shale, right?
Yes, seems so.
It seems so. Will we ever find that on Norwegian continent? That will be good news, or in the Barents?
You
That
mean
would be real good news.
the Manic?
Yeah.
Well, I see the potential because if you look at the new seismic on the eastern, the new Norwegian part on the east of the Finnmark platform, you see that there is a thick succession of sedimentary rocks, 2.5 seconds, something like that, below the top permanent surface.
2.5 seconds.
Yes,
To what,
that means
4,000 meters, maybe.
More. You're talking about 5, 6, 7,000. So
Okay.
it's up close to 10 kilometers
Wow.
of sediments.
Below the top Permian.
Yes, well, most of these seems to be carbonates. I guess that's an analog to what we see in Kilimanjaro, that you probably have rocks from Ordovician and upward, and you have the super domanic facies within this, as indicated by the one of the core from the Finnmark platform.
So there is room for some domanic shale in that sequence then.
Very big rooms.
What's the reason to believe it's there? It might be
Yeah, but-
geological reasons to say it's not there.
Well, I've seen this seismic, and after I saw that, I start thinking this is very, very important. It could be a prolific hydrocarbon basin in the eastern part of the Barents Sea. They have this domain.
You talk about a potential play in that part of the Barents Sea, which is based on the domanic shale. Norwegian Barents Sea.
Yes, that it could. It's a potential for that. Yes, I haven't mapped the entire area. I did it back in 2008, I think, on very, very poor quality.
Torbjørn, you're the realistic guy here. What do you think about that?
I have not seen the domanic yet. I've been working with the domanic in Kilimanjaro, and it is excellent. But we have a problem in the Barents Sea, in the Norwegian part, and that is timing. It became mature and over mature long before you can capture it in any Permian or Triassic or Jurassic reservoir.
We're born too late.
Yeah, that is there could be a point on the shallower part of the Finnmark platform.
The shallow part of the Finnmark platform. You could imagine mature domanic source rock.
Yeah, and it matured relatively lately in Cretaceous or.
Yeah. So you do not discard the possibility, but you're realistic, as you say. It just needs a big lesson.
Yeah, but the area of interest is very narrow.
One of the important things about reading about the Russian oil fields in the Arctic Russia, there are many of the fields that was filled in the Triassic and have stayed and producing today. So they have stored oil for 200 million years or more.
Okay. Kristian?
Yes, Domanic, speaking about that one, Exploro included a conceptual Domanic source rock in our petroleum system model. And I totally agree with Torbjørn. It's the timing and the end of expulsion that is the main critical factor on that one.
Maybe I can comment a little more also on that. When you come down to reservoir depths today of about 4,000 meters, it means that the maximum depth has been 5,000 or 5,500 meters. And that means that the reservoir temperature at max depth was close to 200 degrees centigrade.
Oops, that's low.
And that means that you cannot preserve oil at that temperature. So that is another problem with the a domanic play or a carboniferous play in over large areas.
It is perhaps not the first play I would put my money in.
No, I realize that. But before we even start talking about putting money, more research has been done. Has to be done. Do we have any questions from the audience at this stage?
Yes.
We do. I've seen you before today.
Yeah.
Carsten from Light Petroleum.
Yeah. We have a couple of, let's call them oddities in the saddle between Finnmark and Hammerfest Basin. We have a small discovery in Bamse, slightly larger discovery in Nukula, and Heilo was dry. What do you see as a source rock and migration route for those oils, and why was Heilo dry?
Should I answer?
Yeah, I guess.
Well, we have oil in the Kobbe formation in Nukula that is Triassic. That could be locally sourced. We have a oil in the Bamse. It's 1.5 meter oil. I mean, it's 15 buckets. And we have also one in the Nukula. That oil has an isotope signature that resembles the Jurassic, but it also contains biomarkers that indicate Triassic source rock. It could be a mixture, it could be a blended, as Dag says, but it could also be a source rock that we have not discussed at all here today, and which is a question mark for me, and that is the Snod formation. It could be sourced by the Snod formation, which could also be the source rock for the Pandora oil, which has a different signature. We do not have many evidences of Snod source rock, but we have a well to the west of the Loppa High, which is densely sampled with very high TOC values over a 100-150 meter interval. It's over-matured, but that could have been an excellent source rock. So the Snod oil, the Bamse oil, could have been sourced by the Snod formation. And the same with the Cap Toscana oil in Nukula. It's very similar to Bamse. And such an argument can leave the Heilo well in a migration shadow.
Okay. In that way, Torbjørn, you got the last word. And certainly what I've learned today that the Brandsegg is certainly very complicated as to understanding the geology, as to understanding source rock, reservoir rocks, clay models and so on. Lots of work to do. There is a potential of finding giants still in maybe so far undefined place, or in a defined place. Maybe Geir is right. The giant has already been discovered. It's just a matter of tracing it. There are several places to go. Finnmark, even close to the coast, is a possibility that's been mentioned. And we need to investigate if it's worthwhile going westwards. We can continue discussing this in the pub, Socialen. You're all welcome. You have to pay your own beer or get somebody else to pay it, but we certainly appreciate if you come over and enjoy a beer or two and possibly a meal or whatever. So thank you everyone for coming. It's been a pleasure to have you here, and thanks very much to the speakers, and in particular thanks to the panel. I myself find it quite interesting. I learned a lot, and also that the dog has learned a lot, which I appreciate. That's good. I hope you guys also learned a lot. See you back another time. And that one is, thank you very much for coming.